Howdy, folks. In 2022, we asked whether artificial intelligence was about to change photography. 4 years later, that question has already been answered. AI can now generate convincing images, edit from visual references, extend real photographs, and turn still frames into moving sequences. The question is no longer whether AI is coming, it is what happens to photographers when almost anyone can manufacture a believable image, and what our value becomes when the technology can handle more and more of the production itself. Well, we'll find out right after this. Welcome to Camera Shake, the show that brings you the insider scoop on everything photography and videography. As always, I'm your host, Kersten Luts, and before we begin, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and help us keep bringing you conversations with some of the most interesting people in photography and image making. You can also join the Shake Squad newsletter over at camerashakepodcast.com and support the show at buymeacoffee.com/camerashake. Today's returning guest is a veteran creative director, photographer, and digital imaging specialist with more than 25 years of experience across advertising, retouching, and compositing. He's an Adobe community expert who has presented generative imaging workflows at Adobe Max and Creative Pro, and he continues to work with everything from Photoshop and Firefly to Stable Diffusion and AI video. Please give it up for Micah Burke. Micah, man, how's it going?
Doing well, Chris. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you. It's really interesting, my AI journey really started with the very first conversation that we had back in 2022, when AI really just arrived on the scene basically for most people, because I remember DALL-E had just released, I think, their sort of version 2 or something like that. It was all over the news, and it was the first time that any mere mortal like myself had even heard of prompt-based image generation. And I remember when you first joined the podcast, back then in November. Actually, no, it was November, early November, I think, 2022. So generative AI still felt experimental and slightly unreal. What did you believe we were witnessing at the time?
Yeah, at the time, I could see some of the handwriting on the wall that this was going to become part of everything. I didn't realize it would be part of everything. I thought it was going to be mostly generative, because at the time there wasn't a lot of LLM work going on. So we didn't have the large language model stuff happening where everybody was chatting with these machines every day. I don't know if you recall, I'm fairly old. So back in the 80s, there was a British TV show called Star Cops. And in the show, the guy had a box and he would talk to the box and the box would answer him questions and do things for him and do his planning and all sorts of things. And it was a very interesting concept. And for the show, it was like he was the only person who had this, but it was clear that this was something that they were looking at. And this was an artificial intelligence that he had in this box that would, take care of all of these different things for him and look up information. And I was thinking about that the other day as I was using Grok to answer some medical question for my father. And it was just like, here I am talking to the box. Um, and of course, we all say thank you to the box once it gives us a good answer. So, yeah, so I saw the potential for graphic design. I saw the potential for photography, but I didn't really realize at the time that it was going to be infiltrating absolutely everything. And I think there's still some interesting interesting things coming down the pike, around the horizon, so to speak. That's going to even change things more. But yeah, for now, uh, I didn't think we'd be as far along as we are. And I didn't think it would be in my everyday life as much as it is.
I remember back then, we had a few conversations read in relative quick succession, and they were just like a few months apart, and things had changed so dramatically. There was there was DALL-E and Stable Diffusion, and then very soon after that, Adobe started integrating AI into generative AI into Photoshop, and it just took off from there. Looking back at that original conversation that we had, which one of your predictions do you think turned out to be the most accurate?
I think the use of AI in Photoshop and sort of being an everyday tool has come to pass. I didn't expect the direction it's taken recently, where they've integrated all of the third-party models into Photoshop. I thought they were going to continue down their path with, at the time, they were just playing around with Firefly. I don't think it had even been released yet. Um, but the fact that Adobe has opened the door to the third-party models, it was a big surprise, and I'm very happy they did that, because Firefly, as good as it is for some things, because it's based on a very limited data set, produces very specific looking images and quite often can't produce the images you're looking for anyway. Uh, but it has a lot of good to it. I still think it's excellent at shadows and this sort of thing. Um, as far as prediction wise, I, I don't know that I had foreseen the direction that AI was going to go in the greater world, in the sense that it's affecting everything now. It's affecting like GPU prices, CPU prices, RAM prices. Just being able to access certain data and getting certain parts for your computer is now very difficult, because they're being used in data centers, because AI is taking over everything. Um, I definitely didn't see that coming, but what I did see was that photographers and graphic designers would basically be forced to use this to some extent in their everyday use, and I think there's a lot of naysayers out there who still to this day, hate AI and everything AI, and I understand their perspective, um, but I think from a creative director and a creative photographer um, position, AI is got a lot of potential and a lot of upside.
Was there anything that has sort of moved significantly slower than you expected? Like, was there anything where back in the day you thought like, oh well, I'm sure this is going to come to pass really soon, and then now here we are in 2026, 27, whatever the years. We're still waiting for it.
I think I'm probably didn't mention it back then, but I thought that we'd be a little further along in AI being integrated within the gaming space more. And I know it is being sort of integrated in there in an LLM function where it's taking over dialogues and that sort of thing. But I think we're on the cusp of seeing real-time 3D generation through AI, where um, the levels of a game. I'm a gamer, so these things are interesting to me. But the levels of the game, the interactions within the game are going to be fresh and new every time you play, because it's going to be generated anew by the AI. You're starting to see this in some of the 3D Gaussian splat um, presentations that are appearing on the web now, where they're using these 3D balls, so to speak, to generate a scene. And the scene's being generated either through the 3D engine, or down the road, I'm going to see it being happening live in real time with an AI. Um, I, I thought we'd all have AI built into our computers in the sense of running the models locally. It didn't really occur to me that Google and ChatGPT and these folks would be running their models externally, and that those would far surpass what we could run locally. But now, because you have these data centers out there with gigs and gigs and gigs of VRAM, we can run much faster externally than we can internally. So, for example, the Google I'm thinking in the name of the engine, the VEO3 engine that they use to generate their images is faster than Stable Diffusion is, unless you have a very high end video card, um, which is financially out of reach for most of us right now. But you can generate very quickly with that, and the results are almost always better.
It's interesting actually. You talking about connectivity. I find this with my car because my car is basically is permanently connected to the internet, uh, except for when it isn't, and then it sort of turns from being some futuristic spaceship into a really dumb car. That's really disappointing. I'm driving, I'm like, "Hey Google," I just goes, "Doo, doo, 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 doo," nothing's happening. So I'm like, "Oh my god," you know. I
Uh,
find that. I mean, this is how far we've come in only a few years. Where I'm sort of
of course,
expecting my car to talk to me.
yeah. We've also entered the age, though, in very soon where you will be connected 24/7 with Starlink and other orbital internet providers happening. And I see these. Probably there's going to be a lot of interconnectivity between the different models and the different companies. Your car will have 24/7 internet connection, and that might not be great because right now there are places you can go where you don't have internet, and it's nice. No one can get you. You can't get any emails. No one can reach you on Teams. Your business company, your company can't get you and ask you to join a meeting in 5 minutes notice. You can actually go somewhere where there's no internet, there's no connectivity, and it's wonderful. We're already at the point where there's almost 10,000 satellites in space able to connect us just about anywhere in the world. So I think in the future, and especially with the sort of the data center model that's coming, uh, depending on how you look at it, and the connectivity to the AI and the ILMs will be instantaneous. I was thinking about this yesterday as I was asking Siri, trying not to wake her up, to contact a friend of mine. And there's not a lot of artificial intelligence behind this thing because it kept asking me the wrong name. And I'm pronouncing the name differently and changing, trying to get it to actually call the person I want it to call rather than just, punching it in on my screen. But I'm in my car. So I realized that that'll be a thing of the past eventually because we'll be able to tell it directly exactly who we're wanting to contact, and it will forever make that connection. Um, it, it's it's interesting when it fails and it doesn't work, as you said. Things don't work the way you expect, or it doesn't understand what you're saying. I was thinking about that the other day. Somebody was talking about you know, uh, uh, AI getting integrated within the national security infrastructure. And it's like, did you really want to nuke North Korea? No, I didn't really want to nuke Korea. Oh, that's my bad. The AI says.
Yeah. Was there sort of a moment specifically when when AI stopped feeling like sort of a fascinating novelty, and became a serious production tool for you?
Well, I was using it in production in 2022 for upscaling and
Mm.
generating in regenerating areas of image. Um, but I think as soon as Adobe sort of started adding it directly into Photoshop, where I no longer had to install a plugin. I mean, I was playing with plugins up until about last year, where I was still able to generate through Stable Diffusion directly, and so I was recreating aspects of a photo through Stable Diffusion, and now I can just do that live within the generative fill system. It's I think once that happened and it's now starting to infiltrate into everything. That's sort of when it became a mainstream tool, and I don't think there's any getting around it.
What are the things that you can now do reliably with AI that was effectively impossible when we last spoke in 2022?
Well, video, in 2022, when I did my first presentation at Adobe Max, this was a few years ago, AI video was really janky and really quite blurry, and the artifacting was pretty bad. At the time, I thought it was amazing. It was pretty impressive. And now, of course, I'm generating, 15-second long clips that are getting dropped into the commercials now. And quite often you can't tell it's AI. So uh, that's one of the big things that's changed. Being able to generate within Photoshop or within Firefly a 2K image, and then take it into another app or even within Firefly there, upscale it another two times to get a very high resolution detailed image. That wasn't possible back then. So there's there's a lot you can do now with AI that really surpasses a lot of the thinking that was going on even at that time.
You know, I knew that it had landed when it comes to video when I first saw that Yeti running through the forest getting stoned. That was like, I mean, I can't tell you how many of these clips I kept watching. Do you remember the Yeti was being sold mushrooms by some raccoons? Well, it was
Yes,
just
or there's another one where he dug into some camper's pack and was eating their food and got
oh yeah.
some of their stash, and yeah, he was hilarious, and he's running through the forest going, seeing things. Yeah, there was for a time an app called Sora 2 or Sora, which allowed you to take like three angles of your face, and then you would give it 5 words with your own voice, and it could generate you very accurately. And I was using that extensively to do jokes and stuff on the internet
Mm.
and having a lot of fun with it. And I showed those off the last time I was presented at Adobe Max, and they were a big hit because it was a good, icebreaker sort of. Who's this guy? What's he doing? Oh, he's a lot of fun. So I did these fun little videos. One was me in a Star Trek uniform, and we're at a restaurant called Cons, and of course I'm yelling "Con" because the bill was so big. Things like that. A lot of little funny stuff. The best one I did was I called it Cue Ball, and it was sort of a 1970s hard boiled cop TV show introduction, and it was so well done. It was just so mind blowingly good that um, I'm like, I'm gonna have to get those glasses and that jacket and start dressing that way because it looked good.
That's it. This hat isn't real. It's entirely AI generated.
I thought about generating a background in AI, but I figured my studio room here with all of my tools in it's probably just good enough. So
Yeah. I remember, back in 2022, a lot of attention was placed on writing the perfect prompt. Has prompt engineering already become less important now than directing a model, like with images, selections, and conversations and things like that? Because I feel like I when I converse with ChatGPT, I feel like I upload a lot more images, screenshots into it. I very often use it to verbally communicate with it. So, is prompt writing less important now than it was back then?
yes and no. Back then, prompt writing was a very specific language unto itself. You had to understand what the specific prompt, how the specific prompt was built, or actually specifically how the specific model was built to understand the prompts. Some models were um, you separated keywords with commas. Some models you wrote sentences, but you highlighted certain areas. There was all sorts of tricks you could do to force specific concepts into an image. And now we're writing what seems to be standard language prompts. We're just writing sentences and then seeing what the output is, and then adding sentences to fix the output and to clean up the output. So what's happened is that the language models are being built in such a way that understanding understanding conversational English and then pulling that into the graphic model, like VEO3 is that way. It's very easy now to get better quality output with less intensive prompting, but at the same time now, because we're using real language, you kind of have to be a little more specific in certain ways. Whereas before, I could just use 5 words with commas separating them. Now I have to use a whole sentence and maybe another sentence to explain the first sentence. Uh, so prompting has changed, and I think it's going to just get easier and better. And a lot, and I foresee it's going to be quicker too, as far as from prompt to first generation.
And of course, you can use reference images as well now, which does has that changed sort of the level of control a photographer or art director can achieve?
Um, Yeah, and speaking of specifically from a photography point of view, I'm taking some of my lesser useful photos and then running them through AI and directing the AI to regenerate the photo in a way that I would that's more aesthetically pleasing. Um, and I say that with a caveat that I'm not posting that somewhere and saying, "Hey, this is an actual photo I took." I still feel trepidation about doing that. But I am saying, "Hey, here's an image, right? And this is a representative of the way I felt that day." And I think that's the way I've always been with my creative photography is, but it's I think that's the best way to use AI on images that aren't just strict editing. If you're changing an actual image from ground up, the other great thing you can do with reference images, of course, is animate them. You start with your reference image and you tell the AI to, hey, I want this image to animate a specific way. Um, that's been useful. I've been doing a lot of astrophotography lately, and one of the things you can do with astrophotos, of course, is animate it in sort of a three-dimensional way so that you're flying towards the object, and it gives it depth, and it gives it, little stars flying by Star Trek wise. Um, and that helps people engage with the content in a way that's better than just a static photo. Hey, I took this photo of the North American Nebula, but no, you're actually flying towards the North American Nebula. Um, the other cool thing you can do with reference images, and it's something I might, talk about in my retail work, is taking the reference image of a storefront and adding things to the image to represent what it could look like. My company, we recently started creating these giant balloon mascots that go in front of our retail stores. And everybody wanted to know, what is this thing going to look like when it's in the retail store? Well, I created it in Adobe Illustrator, took it into Firefly, created a pseudo 3D image out of it, and then told it, rather than actually cutting it out in Photoshop, I just told it, take this thing and drop it in this image. And it puts it in there with the shadows and the right colors and nails the look. And I even told it how tall it should be. And it nailed it. And I sent it off and got approval on the project, and we went live. And so now we have all these giant balloons outside our stores that I created basically in AI. Um, it's it makes that process a lot faster, because I would have spent an hour maybe in Photoshop making that look realistic. Now it takes 2 minutes within the AI. So there's a lot you can do with the reference image.
This episode is brought to you by Platypod. You know these moments when you really need a tripod, but taking one with you just feels like too much effort? Too big, too heavy, too awkward to carry around? Well, that's exactly why I love Platypod. I use it in my own work because it gives me a really solid, stable platform for my camera in places where a regular tripod simply is not practical. There's the rugged extreme for larger camera setups, the incredibly versatile Delta, the compact traveler for when space is tight, and the handle, which lets you position your camera in all sorts of creative spaces. And for portrait photographers, Bracket & Bounce is a brilliant portable lighting solution. It helps create flattering directional light without dragging softboxes around, or depending on whatever ceiling happens to be above you. For landscapes, macro, video, wildlife, portraits, or travel photography, Platypod helps you get shots that would otherwise be difficult or even impossible. Head over to platypod.com to take a look. Platypod, where innovation never sleeps. I find that for graphic design, it's actually very useful. So I was designing a sign for a music school not too long ago. And, you've got different design elements that need to be on the sign. And, I just ran that. In actual fact, I just ran that through ChatGPT, and it spat out a version that had everything placed almost perfectly. And so, although the final design wasn't necessarily created in ChatGPT, it it actually sped up the process quite dramatically, because I then didn't have to do the thinking in that respect. It had already almost like done the layout for me, in a way, which I thought was super useful.
We recently, my company made an agreement with one of the Major League Baseball teams, and so we're doing a lot of work with that team. So we're having baseball players come to our stores and signing autographs and that sort of thing. And there was this whole bunch of collateral I had to make for one of these events. And I have I have a to-do list already every day that's gigantic, and this was just another stack of things that needed to get done. One of our employees took it upon herself to generate a bunch of stuff in ChatGPT and sent it to me. And the interesting thing was that she didn't send me finished products or completed images. What she sent me were sort of in situ images of what the sign could look like while it's sitting out in the A-frame, what the sign would look like in the window, which was really neat, because then what I did is I just went, hey, you know what? That just saved me several hours of work of coming up with the design, getting the design approved, etc. So I just took that whole thing into Adobe Illustrator and in Photoshop and started building the assets. Um, so it gave me the base template, as you said, the base template for creating the graphics, and from there we ran with it. I am finding a lot of folks are using maybe ChatGPT or some other AI to generate signs completely, or printable. I have a UV printer, and you can print depth on the UV printer, and it's pretty neat. But I'm seeing a lot of people, just typing something into AI and getting this block of stuff with three-dimensional text on it and dropping it right on top of the image. And there's just too much going on, and there's just it's just clearly AI and it's overdone. And for me, that's a negative. It's a real turnoff. And I was looking at, I am old, so I was looking at Facebook today, and there's several posts which are clearly just that. Someone just went into AI and said, make me a fantastic poster with all of this stuff on it, and out pops this overcooked, overdone image. And but that brings me to an interesting point, which is something I read the other day, which is that if AI is looking at the internet for advertising details and how to do advertising, and it's ingesting a lot of junk advertising, well, then you're probably going to get a lot of junk out when you start to use the AI. So you've got to be very specific in your code, in your prompting, to make sure that you kind of trim some of that down.
You know what I want to see, and this would be super useful and an actual real time saver is if you could ask ChatGPT or Claude or whoever to design you, let's say, a flyer, but then the output would be almost like a PSD file with layers. Because at
Yeah.
that point, you can just turn things on and off and move things around. Just things like changing the text. It's meant to be on a Wednesday rather than a Tuesday. Well, just go in and change the layer rather than having to go through the whole prompting thing again and waiting for the output again. And then, of course, you just you just ask it to change one bit of the text, but it's weirdly changed everything. Like all of that could be avoided if it would just spit out a TIFF or or a PSD with layers. That's the thing I think I'm waiting for. At that point, I'd be like, awesome.
I don't think we're too far off from that.
Mm.
I was noticing that there are, like, if the AI that's in Illustrator for generating from you're giving it a reference image, and it's generating a vector from that. Not that it's great yet, but it's still pretty good. It's better than the old auto trace feature was. It's creating not so much layered, but it's definitely creating vectored objects. So if it's able to know how to create a vector, I'm sure we're months or less than a year away from being able to generate a layered assets. That's going to be a big game changer because, yeah, as you say, changing text or changing anything on image is going to be a real boon. I do know that in Firefly boards, and I don't know if you're using boards in Firefly. I think it's probably one of the best AI tools right now. Um, if you generate an image, you can then right click on the image and tell it, hey, I want to edit text on the image. And it will allow you to edit the text in the image. Now, it'll regenerate the image, but you still have the ability to edit text. And not only that, but it actually looks at the exact text that's there and tries to copy the style. And that was something I showed at Adobe Max last year, was that you can take an image, and this gets into some gray area. You could take an image off the internet and basically steal the style of that text right off the image, and that's just kind of crazy. It's like, I really love this Chrome text. How do I recreate this? Well, you don't necessarily have to know how anymore. You can just say, "Hey, make me text that looks like this with this line of text instead," and the AI will do that. Um, I hopefully people will still learn how to use Photoshop and create that text on their own. But I can see that down the road, it's going to be a challenge to learn those things without just allowing the AI to do it.
But I mean, that could be super useful because I wander around half the time. I see an advert or a poster or whatever or flyer, and I'm thinking, oh, this font is really cool. I wonder what that is. Do you know what I mean? And although there's ways of finding out, but then you have to find the file and download it, blah, blah. It would be so much easier if you could just basically use a reference and basically say, like, okay, well, that is the font I want to use, and it'll just do it.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that takes us into the whole copyright
Well,
discussion.
whoops.
And that's been my big fear, is that when I'm generating these assets, I did some neat little I don't know if I have them around here. Yes, I did some neat coasters some theological coasters with some text on there and a picture, and it generated this. This was generated in the Google VEO3 or Nano Banana. Actually, sorry, it was generated in Gemini, and some of the text was repeated, and there were some issues in here. So I had to actually take this into Photoshop and edit it. Um, but I was looking at it, and there were some things I wanted to rewrite, and I don't have the font, and I don't know what the font is, and I don't know whose font it is, and I could obviously have gone in there and asked, a font finder or the built-in systems in Photoshop to tell me what the font was, but instead I ended up just kind of piecing it together because it wasn't a lot of editing. Um, but then that might have actually been someone's font that they created, and here I am just throwing it on a coaster without any concern about who created that font. I think that's a little more difficult from a copyright perspective than, say, the images, because I think the images are image generation within AI. I think is a little more gray area in the sense that it's learning from images. It's not. Back in the 2022, I think we had a discussion about how AI actually generates images, and back in the day, there was a lot of misunderstandings, and people were thinking that AI was somehow compositing images together rather than actually generating them mathematically, which is what it's actually doing. Um, Text, on the other hand, it's looking at different fonts out there and it's duplicating a font. And to me, that's a little more of a problematic area than imaging.
Do you think that the move from generated stills to like convincing motion and AI video, does that represent a bigger disruption for photographers than, let's say, text to image did?
Bigger disruption, I'm not sure. I think I think the difficulty is right now that we live in an age of video, and we live in an age where everybody's taking video. And so the still photographer who, like myself, who likes just to go and take snapshots of landscapes or of the stars, um, we're now in a position where if we post that on Instagram or whatever, we're not going to get a lot of views. Uh, However, well, depending on who you are, however, if it's got motion to it, the algorithms are already set to more likely post your image to other people just because it's got animation and video and something interactive to it. So our whole culture is sort of being driven by these algorithms towards adding motion to everything, for good or for bad. I could foresee a time when we'll all have, digital screens and our photos will come alive simply automatically through AI, God forbid. I remember I was messing around with some old historical photos that I had from my family and my mom and people who I've known in the past, and out of on a whim, I had it animate a couple of them, and the motion was creepily realistic, and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not going there with these. So, um, I think it's a big disruptor, and I definitely think from a photographer perspective, it's kind of fun to string take a bunch of photos you really enjoyed. I did this with the sunsets recently. I took a bunch of sunset photos, threw them up, animated them, and just strung them together in a video and posted it. And of course, I got a lot of likes or whatever. But the whole idea there was less about getting likes and more about look what can be done with your still images.
I did a little experiment the other day, which didn't necessarily have to do with motion, although thinking about it now, that could be the next logical step. So I took an old black and white photo of the Billy the Kid gang, right? And I basically just, and again, I'm just simply using ChatGPT for that. So I ran it through ChatGPT. And I basically said, oh, retouch it and color it, and it came back with a really good, realistic looking colored version of it. I'm thinking, well, that's pretty cool. Well, then I thought, okay, well, let's do that again. And I said, like, well, make them look like they were like I don't know, overweight um pimps in the 70s. And it did it was unbelievably photorealistic. It just came back with like, this image of a bunch of overweight guys. One of them was Billy the Kid, you know, in the 70s. And then we're like, okay, well, make them look like a boy band from the 90s. I did that. And I thought, okay, based on what you know about the history of fashion, predict what they will be, what they will look like in, like, I don't know, 2050 or something. And it came back with this, and it's like, I mean, you could dump a lot of time into stuff like that. That's the thing.
Yep.
But I should have taken it to the next level and just animated the picture as well. That would have been
Yep. Yeah, it's a lot of fun to do that. As we progress, for example, there's a new model out called Sea Dance, which you can access within Firefly boards. Um, or there's other platforms out there. You can access this very advanced video model. I think it's a Chinese video model. And if you're in the US, you can't access it within Firefly boards. They won't let you. You can access it through another platform called Higgsfield.ai. Higgsfield.ai is actually pretty good. But within Firefly boards, if you try to use Sea Dance on an image and you're in the US and a few other countries, it'll actively tell you don't have the rights to do this. So um, the but it generates, from my perspective, some of the very best video that I've seen so far. Some of the cleanest and best. I'm using it right now to generate a video of. I can quickly share my screen and walk everybody through it. This is the process I'm going through, and so to generate these videos, the process I went through is I generated first sort of the image, and so if I zoom in here, you'll see I've generated a school. And after the school, there's a little boy who's walking down the hall. He's kind of sad because he doesn't have a backpack. And here he is sitting at a chair in the school. He has a raggedy old backpack. And here's some people donating. Here's some more people donating. And here he is happy at the end of the school day with his new backpack. And then the school supply drive for my company. Generating the images in right here within Google. This is Adobe Firefly using the Google Gemini 3.0, or sorry, 3.1. And then these videos were generated in Higgsfield using Seed Dance. And I had to do that again because it won't let me generate Seed Dance here in Adobe Firefly right now. But then the videos look pretty good. And I'm just going to use a couple of seconds of each video. Here he is, sad boy walking down the hallway in the school. Here he is, the teacher's walking back there. And here's the donation. And in this case, this was a real photo in a store that we took. The donation bucket was not there. The people here weren't there. I added those in using Gemini, and then just animated it right there in Sea Dance. This is a real photo that we took in our store. And then this photo, I used these people, same thing, added the bucket. And here they are walking through and dropping in a donation. And here's our little kid. He's real happy walking down the road. I may recreate this one because he looks very AI, but this is a graphic I created in Photoshop. I exported the graphic, and then I told Google to animate the graphic. So I didn't have to do any of the animation in After Effects or in Premiere. I just had it do it for me. And the cool thing is now this very important project that we have is now ready to go, complete.
wow. And that is why the job of the animator is dead, basically.
Yeah, I think I still think, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I think there's going to be down the road, it would be great to be able to pull this animation out as a template, like an After Effects template, and then change things up as necessary. The other thing is for reference images, I'll show you this one real quick. Another thing I do at the office is I take pictures of everybody's dog during the Bring Your Dog to Work day. And we take these images, and I used to set up an entire, as you can see with this blue image here, I used to set up an entire photo studio and with lights and everything and take the picture. Now I just have the dog stand someplace, take a picture with my iPhone, and then have the AI generate the portfolio. It's much easier to do this than to try to edit each dog into a photo. This used to take me all day, and now it takes me, an hour or two to get all these dogs together. Plus, I can do crazy stuff like this very quickly without having to have the dogs in a specific position and get them perfectly arranged. I used to do I used to do these really great collages for everybody and then print it out, but it would take me a day or two of work that I could be doing actual work. And so now I just create a poster like this, and I even add my own cats in here, and we're ready to go. And you can animate this, of course, and just generate the video, animate this image, and you're good to go. You just upload it to Facebook, and we have our company bring your dog to work day stuff. So that's it's pretty awesome what you can do with that, saving time and a lot of resources that doing that way.
Where does AI create hidden labor, like, masking, retouching, color matching, um, consistency, or like, endless variations of everything? Is there an instance where AI actually creates more work for you rather than saves you time?
Yeah, I think one of the things I've noticed, especially within Photoshop, is you're trying to there's a button you can click when you doing a composite, and you paste something into Photoshop, and you tell it um, to match the colors and match the imaging, and often it adds details around the object, so to blend it in, and it blends the object in fairly, usually very convincingly. But what you do notice is that now you have an object that's no longer perfectly masked, and you have to go in there and edit it and clean it up. Well, now you're editing sort of a flat image that's been recreated. Um, so that adds work a lot of times. I think the other thing I'm noticing is that I'm often generating images, and they come out, as we've discussed earlier, they come out flat, and now you have to go in there and trace things out and cut things out as necessary. Um, there's often unwanted objects. I did an image the other day of someone's yard, and they wanted to see what it would look like with a specific kind of grass. So we edited it in the grass, but after doing that, it also dropped a car, a random car in the guy's driveway. He's like, "Whose car is that?" It's like, I don't know. The cool thing was, is because I had the original image, I could just edit it right out. And that's one of the big benefits, I think, of using traditional Photoshop skills with AI, is that you're able to blend the images more seamlessly, add things and remove things that aren't supposed to be there or are supposed to be there. Um, Quickly and easily, because you have the skills and the techniques, whereas someone who is still prompt based and doesn't know how to use these products is going to spend another 20 minutes prompting it in and not getting the results they want. And plus, it tends to change the image every time you regenerate it. It doesn't just take the original image and generate it again. Although if you use the right prompt, you can now use this new image as your reference and tell it, don't change anything except remove the car or something like that.
How difficult is it then to maintain brand consistency when when the underlying model is basically designed to keep producing something new all the time?
Yeah, that actually can be a big challenge. One of the things I've noticed is we're moving, my company moves towards using Claude in everyday business. Is that I've provided Claude with our company branding and company colors and this, but it'll often, when it's generating an image or it's generating sort of a design concept, it will edit the logo in such a way that it's no longer our logo, and so there is some
Yeah.
challenge. I definitely think as time progresses, that's going to get better. And of course, you can tell the more graphically inclined model, you can tell them specifically, do not change this, and it probably won't. Um, I mean, you'll go from being, sleep world to, shrewish, and it'll be unreadable. And that's always great and useful. Um, but I think if you're careful with it, you can get it to generate what you're after. But there's still going to be, some brand consistency issues. I think the best way to use this now is storyboarding, and less than generating final output. It's really better for storyboarding. Um, I think down the road it's going to be really great for final output, but right now it's really good for doing storyboards and mood boards and that sort of thing.
What's the basic difference between Claude? You mentioned Claude a number of times, between Claude and ChatGPT, for example.
I think they're very similar in the concept. They're both large language models. ChatGPT is a little more conversational, I find. Claude is a little more output driven. So, Claude can create programs. The Claude code system and in Claude itself can generate pretty much ready to go out of the box applications, just with a little bit of prompting. I created a bunch of gravity simulators. um, I wanted to show my wife and I were watching Project Hail Mary, and she's trying to understand gravity and why things have to be the way they are. And I'm trying to explain with my fingers, hey, well, you've got the sun here, and you've got the star, and you've got to swing around. And I just told Claude, hey, generate a simple gravity simulation showing the planet and the, sort of using the fabric of time and space. And it did a really nice job. You can add planets and stars and things, and it spin them around. Um, and I I coded nothing apart from a little bit of HTML to post it online. And it would have done that for me too. So it created this very convincing JavaScript application that you can go and manipulate online. And it was pretty impressive. I did have to go through several iterations, and I did find some interesting aspects about AI where, for example, you tell the AI to do this one thing and it'll mess up, and you'll go, hey, you've messed up. Oh, yes, I've messed up. Let me fix it. And then you end up in a loop where it tries several times to do the same thing over and over. And what happened is that it had a fix to the problem. It applied the fix, it would realize the fix didn't work, and then it would go back to the original. And then you go, hey, it's still not working. And it'd go, oh, I've got the fix. And it would apply that very same fix that didn't work. And so I got into a loop with it. And what I realized is that either the software didn't know what to do or the large language model couldn't figure it out. But getting back to your original question, as far as Claude versus ChatGPT is a more generalized model right now. It can do sort of the chat interaction, artificial intelligence, where you ask it a question and it gives you lengthy, sometimes completely wrong answers. And then it'll also generate images, and pretty good. ChatGPT's image generation is quite good, although I find its advertising usage very questionable. Uh, but Claude, on the other hand, gives very detailed and more lengthy and more researched answers just from a large language model. I don't find that Claude's design work is quite up to par yet. I'm not very happy with it, and I'm trying to learn ways of making it better. But for now, I'm still using Firefly boards with all the different models built into it for most things.
Are clients explicitly asking you to use AI, or are they simply sort of expecting, more images, more variations, faster delivery, that sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely asking for faster delivery. We're at a point now where, you tell your boss, "Hey, this is gonna take this amount of time," and they go, "Can't you just throw it into AI and have it do it?" And sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is, "Well, no, that's not how we do things." Um, when you're creating video and you want specific things in a video, if my boss comes back and say, "Hey, can you change the kid's hair color in this video?" I'm gonna say yes, but I'm not sure that the video is gonna be the exact same video, right? So it's not
Yeah.
like we're in the old days where we could just change the sunlight a little bit in After Effects. Now it's gonna regenerate it, and it's gonna change a lot of things. So that is one of the concerns I have right now, is that when the client, or in my case, my boss, comes to me and wants to change a video out, it's not as simple as just swapping it with a new video. I'm going to have to go generate a new video, and that's going to take the process of generate the video is going to take time. It will take a lot less time than hiring a videographer and hiring a model and finding the right place and then shooting the video, but it's still going to take time, and it's time that they're expecting is easy. It's going to take no time at all, just because AI is magic and can do anything, right? So it
Yeah.
doesn't quite work that way.
Has that had an impact on costs? I mean, has AI changed what clients believe creative work should cost?
Yes, definitely. I'm definitely seeing sort of a degradation in out in the world. There's a degradation in quality. So the expectation is that you can create in speed. You can create things very quickly, and it's going to be much cheaper. And this is true to an extent, but at the same time, as photographers, as users of Photoshop and other products, we know that an image is made up of parts, and that we're going to have to go in there and edit parts, and then there's still going to be some time involved. But the expectation doesn't necessarily meet reality when it comes to the speed at which you're going to be able to generate an image that's perfect. And if you're any kind of perfectionist, if you're any kind of person who's really into good photography, then you're looking for that really crisp, clean, perfect image. And often you're going to find that details aren't going to be perfect. And for me, that's a problem. Recently, we had a big image of the Oracle Stadium that I was working on, and Oracle Park, the Giants folks sent me a photo and said, "Hey, use this image." Well, I'm going to blow this thing up to 14 feet by 9 feet tall, and it's a 240K image, and so it's not going to blow up that big. There's just no way this is going to work. So I went in and started to regenerate the image in AI and making it bigger and bigger, and then I upscale the image, and then I go in and regenerate parts of the image in pieces. And it took a lot longer than just going and getting a decent photo off the bat. Finding a decent photo of the specific park at the specific time that they wanted was impossible because it just didn't exist yet. So I had to go in and edit the image in a way that would represent the park properly, and still be big enough and usable enough to fit on a 14-foot backdrop. Uh, it took 2 or 3 days, and so the expectation was, oh, they sent you a photo, you're good to go. Well, no, not really. This photo isn't usable, um, but the end result turned out to be really good. Another example was we were going to, within the Giants Park, we put a back we put a wrap on a wall within the rest and recovery room. So when the pitchers or the batters come off of the field, during inning changes, they need some place to go and rest and recover. So they actually have a room that's kind of dark, and it's got a couple of beds in there, and they can go and relax. But they wanted to wrap it in such a way that it represented, our company and our relationship with the Giants. And so what we came up with was wrapping it with a photo of San Francisco with the fog and sort of a very comfortable image. So I found this great photographer named Ryan Fitzsimmons, who's online and does a lot of aerial photography of San Francisco and the surrounding area. And I loved his photo, and I used it, and they go, "It's great. Can you make it nighttime?" Well, he doesn't have a photo of this at this specific angle at nighttime. So I went into Photoshop, played with it a bit, did a day to night, and it wasn't quite right. Took the same image into Firefly, told it to do it in Firefly boards, and sure enough, it comes up with a fantastic image, but it's still really low resolution. I go back to the photographer and I go, "Hey, here's our options. We can either try and shoot this again at night, or I can use AI to create it. We'll still give you credit. We'll still pay you for the image and license the image from you." He was fine with us using AI, and that's what we did. Uh, what I then had to do after generating that same image in AI was to go in and recreate the image in sections so that the quality was high enough that when you printed it on the wall, it would look realistic and it would look good. Because your first generation, even at 2K, if you're going to blow this up to put on a wall, it's going to make a very pixelated image. What I wanted was crisp details. And it's actually something I ended up doing and is now in the Giants locker room, is this gigantic image of San Francisco with our mascot and our logos and that sort of thing on there. Um, but that took a lot longer than just, hey, throw an image on a wall and we're good to go. Um, Even using AI, it took a lot longer, but I was able to do something that was impossible, just 5 years ago. Take this image and blow it up in such a way that it looked fine. Couldn't have done it. And now I can take a low res image and blow it up as big as I want, uh, almost with no degradation. But what you end up doing, though, of course, is taking that image, taking it in Photoshop, and then masking in the areas you want to be highly detailed.
Hmm. But AI is often accused of destroying, especially junior roles. Um, are there any junior production tasks that are already being compressed, and what new work is appearing in their place? Because historically, what's happened a lot of the time, whenever there was sort of a particular technological revolution on one hand, it has then spawned of new opportunities on the other. Is something like that happening in in the imaging industry when it comes to AI?
I'm sure that's happening. I think a lot of what I'm seeing now is that initial designs are being handed off to the AI to generate. Um, so your initial graphic designs are being generated by the AI and then recreated, as I've been doing within traditional tools, um, that may be dumbing designers down, uh, or at least taking away some of that role. Of course, we're still expected to produce now more imaging and more graphic design because we're supposedly able to get things out faster. As far as junior roles go within photography and that sort of thing, I think what I am seeing is I'm seeing a lack of interest in photography as a whole within the industry. I'm starting to see folks who take photos for granted. There's a fairly great photographer on X. I was noticing he posted a picture of a lion in a savannah area, and it was a great shot. I loved the photo, liked it, said it was a good shot. And then right after my comment, someone comes on there and says, "This same photo I saw 2 weeks ago by some other guy, and you just stole his photo." And it's clear to me that this fellow who I've known for years, who's a wildlife photographer in Africa, did not steal this photo. It's a lion in the savannah, and I mean everybody who's ever gone on safari probably has a similar looking photo. Um, but the fellow doubled down on it, and then he started saying, "Well, it's probably AI. You probably just regenerated it with AI." And I'm seeing a lot of that happening. What may be happening is that we're seeing a lot, at least within the photography industry, of folks who are less likely to post or less likely to take that photo. Myself, I'm finding that I'm taking more photos with my iPhone than with my professional gear because I know I can take it into AI and clean it up quickly and easily. Um, what I don't want to see happening is perhaps AI getting put into cameras and editing our photos before they they leave the camera.
Yeah, that's a dangerous thing. And I mean, this I think this is sort of discussion between when it comes to computational photography, like the sort of thing that we're seeing in smartphones, iPhones and Androids and things. And of course, the one of the things that people talk about a lot is the fact that your iPhone is able to do things that your $3,000 Nikon camera can't do. And why can't it do it? Should it be able to do it? Um, you know, and that's sort of that's the question mark. I had a conversation recently, where we're talking about connectivity in particular. When it comes to smartphones, I mean, the fact that I can take a snapshot on my iPhone, and within seconds, it's up on Instagram. I think I mentioned Facebook last time. Whichever platform, whichever platform. But the fact that I can do that with my iPhone and not with my Nikon Z8 is frustrating on one hand, because now the tool that allows me to take amazing images now doesn't allow me to show these images
Yep.
instantaneously, whilst the tool that I've got in my pocket, um, that's meant to be a communication device apparently, uh, gives me that ability. And it's sort of, I think there's a sort of a potentially a disconnect. But then again, how much computational photography do you really want inside of your pro camera?
hmm
And where's that line?
Well, I was thinking about the same thing in a different way. My friend Dax Castro, who's popular within the Adobe Max space, he's into disabilities and what's the word I'm looking for? Accessibility programming within PDFs and within other aspects. He's really gotten into astrophotography lately, and I've dabbled in astrophotography. I'm by no means a pro, and he went from being completely not knowing anything about astrophotography to now he's got a very expensive setup with wires all over it and all of these different modules connected to his telescope to take these very long exposures. So a few months ago, we went up into the mountains here and shot some photos, and I rented a telescope, a little small micro, not professional telescope that would connect to my app and my phone, and I could just control it and drive it through there. And it does all of the same features that his very expensive $4,000 rig does in this tiny little $500 telescope. Now, the image quality wasn't even close, but I was able to see things with that telescope that I've never seen before as a as an amateur astrophotographer. Um, and for, the cost of a lens, I was able to get an entire rig that could do very good, astrophotography because it's doing all the computational work within the machine itself. For those who don't know, with astrophotography, long exposure astrophotography, you're taking many, many exposures over long, long periods, and then you're taking it into your computer and you're stacking them together to filter out the noise and to get better resolution. And then you have to manipulate the color spectrum to get it to look like it does in those NASA photos. This machine was doing all of that right there in the box. None of it had to be done after the fact on the phone where I'm pulling the photos in. So for me, for the beginner, that's going to be a very tempting offer for them to get into astrophotography. I can see down the road that my Sony camera, when I take a snap, is going to, as it right now, when you're looking at the photo, it's applying a JPEG overlay to show you what it's going to look like. But when you pull that raw in, it doesn't look anything like the JPEG did. In the same way, it's going to start applying other AI sort of features if you so apply them. One of the things I would love to have is sort of telephone pole and telephone line removal built into
Oh,
my
yeah.
camera. That would be mind blowing, wouldn't it? Um,
Yeah.
my landscape shots are so great, but I take hours to edit out the lines and stuff. Well, now it's all done in camera. That'll be pretty neat, right?
Or like, in to use portrait photography as an example, tethering into a photo is such a game changer from tethering into, let's say, Lightroom or Capture One, just simply because, and I know you can do something similar in Lightroom, for example, but because Evoto is so good
Hmm.
at retouching skin and eyes and everything else, when you use it in conjunction, when you use the tethering in conjunction with a preset, it's unbelievable. I mean, 95% of the retouching was already done by the time that photo appears on the screen. And it's a total game changer.
Hmm.
Not only from the perspective of, well, the first time my client comes to the screen, they already see pretty much a fully baked image. They don't have to like wait to see what it looks like after the retouching's been done. Um, and also, of course, from my perspective, it means that I don't have to spend hours after the shoot, retouching 50 images. They're already pretty much done.
Hmm.
Now, if Voto can do that on my computer, then of course the next question is, well, why can't it do it directly in camera?
Yeah, and given how much computation is already happening in most of our cameras,
Mm,
processors and in there, I think in the future they'll be able to do a lot of that. Um, I think the only thing holding it back right now is probably you know fast RAM and processing power. And given the price of those things right now, it might
right.
be a ways off. But I definitely see that a higher end camera system, maybe slightly more bulky, especially if you're like me and you're running around with these little compact APS-C cameras, um, you're going to be able to have, with a larger camera system, probably better computational if you're into that. Uh, it would be nice. I would love, I with my astrophotography, and I set it up on the tracking device, and it goes all night and tracks the Milky Way through the sky. I then have to bring it home, stack it in a stacking software or in Photoshop, and then I'm playing with the colors to pull the light out. It's a lot of work. Um, there's a software for astrophotography called Cyril, and another one whose name I can't remember right at the moment. But the Cyril, there's a bunch of presets, and you can just run the preset, and it does all of this computational work on the photo, so that you're starting with something that's already pretty much ready to start manipulating and tweaking, rather than having to start from the very beginning. All of that easily, it's just math. It can be easily done within the camera's system. It's just looking at the stacked photos, pushing it together, throwing the ones that are too out of focus or that there's too much movement, and then giving you a final image ready to go. As I said, but that little telescope was doing all of that already. So there's no reason that a camera system couldn't do that already. And uh, I was thinking about that because we talked, you mentioned the phones that are already doing some of that. The Samsung phones, when you zoom in on the moon, and it's overlaying a moon on top of your moon to make it look real.
Yeah.
Um, that makes me, I don't want that, but I could see that being, a slider. How much do you want us to edit the image? Maybe,
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
I mean, you've worked in compositing and like photo manipulation for many years. Where, if anywhere, is that meaningful line between a traditional composite and a generative image?
Yeah, I don't know that there is one anymore.
Mm.
I think in the past, even within Photoshop, there wasn't so much AI happening as much as, the old neural filters and those sort of things that Adobe was giving us, that were still altering the image in such a way that it wasn't necessarily, out of the box. Um, I, I don't, especially with composites, I don't really necessarily think that there needs to be a purity of the image. When it comes to photographs, I can understand that the desire for more of a purity of image within compositing work and, poster creation and that sort of thing. uh, Everything sort of just blends together and it's gravy. And so AI simply becomes one more tool in generating the composite. Uh, I think most folks, I work with some folks like Lisa Carney. I've worked with her a little bit in doing some poster creation and some asset creation for TV and movies, and just getting her started in AI. One example was there was a rug in a room and they needed that rug extended. Well, the rug was a detailed um, Oriental style rug, and there's no easy way to recreate that rug. And if you just grabbed a section and told AI, "Hey, regenerate this," especially a year ago, it was kind of just generating gobbledygook. So what we had to do was use traditional compositing techniques to pull the people out of the image, to remove the rug to begin with. And so we just started with a bare floor, and then took the rug, the photograph of the rug that we had, and using Photoshop, we reoriented the rug so that it was like a rectangle. And then I took it into AI and had it recreate the rug completely. And then went back and edited back in some of the errors and problems that are on the rug, because it's supposed to be an old chewed up rug. Took that final image and then recomposited it back into the photo. So it extended the rug the way they wanted it and gave us a better looking rug, but it still retained all the features of the original rug. So that probably would have been possible before AI. You would have used, your traditional uh, eyedropper tools and the masking tools, etc., to the clone tool, especially to create the borders and that sort of thing. But it wouldn't have been as quick, and it probably wouldn't have been as good. Um, Simply because the AI can generate a rug that looks more realistic and more full than the one you could with traditional tools.
Well, it's interesting because we get better results with less technical know-how, so to say. Does removing that technical friction gives more freedom to concentrate on ideas, or can it also remove the thought and the intention that made the work personal?
I'm going to say yes to both. And I think one of my concerns is, as a designer, is that down the road, people will not know how to do basic functional
Mm.
Photoshop work. And I I think about that. At the same time, I remember one of my first jobs was in a data center back in what we call data centers now. It used to be it was a big room full of large IBM computers, mainframe computer systems, and they were all programmed with um, these cards, these punch cards, and you would create this program in the punch card and you drop it in, and that's how it actually ran the program
Mhm.
instead of using disks, hard drives, or anything. And if there was an error in the punch card, you had to recreate the whole set, etc. The funny thing there was, of course, by the time I started working there, they were moving those mainframes out, and we were, of course, no longer using punch cards. And the people who I was working with were the original punch card programmers, and they were not happy to see me because I was being brought in, paying less, being probably paid less money than they were to do a similar job. Um, and they're being relegated literally to the dustbin because their skills are no longer required. Um, I'm not sure that's going to happen for Photoshop compositors, especially the higher end folks. AI will be able to generate a lot of nice stuff, and it can do very good work. But if you're after something very specific, the AI is going to have a hard time generating that just through prompting. And so using reference images, though, you can probably get a lot closer. Um, but yeah, I think a little bit of both is happening there. There's going to be a loss of technique down the road. Um, the question is are those techniques, and I don't know how to answer this, in 10 years, are those techniques useful anymore? I don't know.
Well, that's actually the thing. I mean, I often wonder, which traditional photographic skills will become more valuable as as synthetic AI imagery becomes even easier to produce.
But just think, it'll become artisanal, right? I mean, hey, look, this image was not created by AI at all, and it was barely retouched in traditional retouching systems. I mean, there's been a resurgence in film cameras and film developing,
Mm.
and I don't know that there's a market for it, but there's definitely a resurgence in people interested in it, hobby wise. There's definitely something to be said about a handcrafted object versus something that was created by a machine, and I think that'll always be the case. But at the same time, sort of the Timuification of the universe here, we're seeing people want things cheaper and faster, uh, and I think that includes their imaging and their imagery. And unfortunately, uh, we get sort of I don't know how to put it, the sort of the Kincaid folks who are after sort of the schlocky looking images. But it's been that way for a long time. I remember back in the day, someone would overcook an image with HDR and post it on Facebook, and it would get a bazillion likes, and you're like,
Yeah.
"This is the most horrible production I've
Right.
ever seen." And everybody's like, "Oh, that's so wonderful." And now I'm seeing a lot of AI generated images of nonsense, especially since I hang out in atmospheric phenomena. People posting pictures of rainbows that are just impossible, right? And back in the day, it was all photoshopped and rainbows
Mm.
going 15 different directions. People are like, "Isn't it beautiful? Nature's wonderful." And it's like, yeah, this isn't nature. This is Photoshop. Well, now it's not nature. It's AI. The same issues coming up. Yeah.
Biggest compliment, weirdly, I feel I got recently was I met some young video guys that were doing some promo video in a cafe that I hang out at. And, we're chatting, da da da, and it got to the point where it's like, what's your Insta, and so I gave him my three heads in a row Instagram, and they looked at the images and were like, wow, these are awesome, man. Is that all AI? And I'm like, no, man, none of this is AI. And they just really couldn't believe it. They were like, what do you mean? This isn't AI? Like, no, this is like that's what I shoot. And it was interesting to me. I mean, they were relatively young guys, and I'm thinking like, wow, that's really going to be a worldview when you really think that anything just because it's good now by default has to be AI, or the assumption is that that's AI. That's that I think, and I sort of thought I wasn't really quite sure whether I should take that as a compliment or an insult, and I've sort of just decided, I'll take it as a compliment because why not?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the old saying, right? When you would take a great photo and you'd post it someplace, and everybody would say, "Wow, you must have a great camera," right? It's the same
Yes,
thing. It's
exactly
just
right.
now
Yeah,
it's now, "Oh, you must have great AI skills," and it's like,
yeah.
"No, I just took a good shot." Um, I think it's one of the reasons when I do take a photo and I do alter it with AI, I don't generally just alter it slightly and, change the color or whatever. I tend to try and make something very creative out of it. Um, this year's Adobe Max, we're doing large, long posters that are sort of supposed to be museum pieces.
Hmm.
And so I took some photos I did in the Japanese tea garden, and I told the AI to generate sort of ukiyo-e watercolor style, washi style images out of it, rather than just manipulating the photo and saying, "There's my done." I'm generating a completely new image from that, based on that image, using it as the reference, and then going in there in Photoshop and editing and changing the graphics and stuff like that. But for me, the integrity of the image is important when I'm trying to represent what I really saw. Um, and I want to caveat that when I say what I really saw, whenever we take a photo, and I think this is an opportunity for folks to recognize it. When you take a photo, it's not taking what you really saw ever. The photo is being interpreted by the sensor, which is then being interpreted by the software, which is then being interpreted by whatever color uh, you apply to it. And then it's getting put into Lightroom or whatever application you're using to manipulate it with, and then you're dodging and burning, etc. So it's never just a photo. And
Yeah.
even old cameras, film cameras, were never just a photo because you're capturing it on film, which has specific properties and
Yeah.
color changes and alterations. So can we get back towards that original? And that's the other thing. I was talking with my wife about this because she loves this. She loves this. Back in the day, it was always, "Is this photoshopped?" And I'm like, "Honey, everything's photoshopped. Nothing comes out of my, especially if it's from me. Nothing comes out of my computer that isn't photoshopped." Um, in fact, fun story. One of my favorite images that I took, and it's the one that I've made the most money off of over the past 25 years, is this photo of Mount Shasta. And I got up really early in the morning and went down to the base of the lake where Mount Shasta's there and the lake's right in front of you. And it's this beautiful pink image, which actually I have right here. I can post it. This beautiful image of Mount Shasta. And this image, it's a great photo. But if you saw the raw, and I think everybody would know how that is, if you saw the raw it was just a gray, it was a grayish sky. There was a tiny bit of pink in the sky, but all of that color wasn't really there. This was all manipulated in Lightroom back in 2012 and came up with this pretty good image. I was really happy with it. I must have manipulated it for weeks, and then I would come back to it and change it and start over again. And as you can see, I created a sort of a Japanese style version of it there with my name on it in Japanese and some koi for my friend Dax. But the interesting thing about this image is that I posted it online. I posted it up on at the time I used 500 pics, offered it for sale. And the next thing you know, I'm driving down the road and my photo is on a billboard on a ZTE phone. It's the default background for this entire line of ZTE phones.
Yes.
And I got a grand total of $20 for that photo.
Yeah.
So I was a little upset about that. But over the past years, I kind of figured it out. I've probably made $600 total on this photo. And it's probably the most I've ever made on a photo, and I'm still happy and proud of it. I look at it now and I think of all the things I'd like to do differently and depth wise and how I'd like to change it. And I could probably do
Mhm.
that in AI, but yeah, I won't. Um, but we're still manipulating. We were manipulating photos back in 2012 without AI and getting them to make them look the way we wanted back then. And now AI is just making that a little quicker and a little easier. And I may take that original raws and see what AI does with it. That might be fun to do.
Yeah. Do you remember back in 2023, you helped Dave Williams and me to manufacture like a fictional Finland holiday? Do you remember that?
Yes, I
Um,
do.
and I think almost everybody believed that Dave Williams even was actually vacationing in Finland. I think there was one person or something who commented on, they thought it was AI, but
Right.
it was quite sort of an elaborate hoax, basically. Um, uh, d- but I think we called it the vacation or something like that. Um, what did that experiment teach you at the time?
Well, I think you and I and most folks to your podcast, listeners to your podcast, know that you necessarily can't necessarily trust any image. Um, Nowadays, even more so. And at that time, it was kind of fun. Uh, and now it's sort of world news that you can fake anything. Um, and I think what that taught me at the time was that, even professionals can be fooled by this stuff. And now even more so because we can generate 4K images that look like they were taken from a camera within a machine without ever actually seeing that place.
Mm.
And 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it was kind of just fun and games, and now it's every day, and we're using these tools all the time.
It was interesting actually at the time, because I thought at the time, bearing in mind this is like 3 years ago, I thought I was sort of wondering whether whether people sort of believed the pixels, the images, or whether they believed the story, and of course the people presenting it, because it was, Dave at the time posted it on his social media, and you know at the time it would have been perfectly normal for Dave Williams, who was, a travel writer, stroke travel photographer, or still is, um, who specializes in the Nordics and in Nordic countries in the Arctic. It would have been perfectly feasible for him to have gone to Finland on a
Mhm.
vacation. I mean, there was nothing, there was nothing like extraordinary about that in a sense. And so I, at the time, I thought, well, maybe people didn't look closely enough. Maybe they just bought the story because it made so much sense. Um, but if we repeated that experiment with today's tools, do you think there would be anybody um, who would think that this was fake, or would there be anything left like for viewers to detect? I mean, it's not like AI isn't exactly giving us like six fingers on a hand anymore.
Yes and no. I think people are more skeptical of images now than they used to be. Um, so I think it's how it's presented. If you presented this as if this was, this really happened and you didn't suggest that there's something funky going on and we're asking you to figure it out, I think there would be less doubt. You might get someone who would pixel peep or try to look at the XF data or um
Yeah,
it, but it's the situation in which it's in. If he's just standing in front of something and here I'm staying in this old rickety shack, um I think the only thing that might give it away is the specific objects within the image. And what I mean by that is I saw an image the other day that everybody was just sort of going along with, and then somebody noticed in the image there was an object that didn't belong in that location. It was a newspaper or something, and the text on the newspaper was garbled, and it was clearly AI generated. And so suddenly, the entire image now is in question, and the entire narrative around the image is in question. Of course, within 6 months to a year from now, that'll never happen again.
yeah,
So I think we're getting to the point where images are simultaneously more believable and yet less trustworthy. And so would folks believe it? Given that story, they probably would. We could probably get away with it even easier. And I doubt folks would even question it. Unless the specific deer didn't belong in that forest or the trees were spruce and they should have been something else. Um, and those are kind of things that won't necessarily know until someone points them out.
yeah. And I should clarify, just for clarification. There is a whole episode that we made at the time about this, and I think it was called something like the Great Vacation or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was
So
Vacation with AI in there. Yeah.
correct, yeah. So anybody listening who wants to know more about this little project, go find that episode. I can't remember exactly what episode number it was, probably around 200 something. Um, but it wasn't a malicious attempt to deceive people. It was basically an experiment to see whether whether AI and the technology had gotten to the point where you could, in theory, create imagery that would deceive people to that point. So it was really an experiment that we did, and some of the images were really, even for the time, were really interesting because a lot of it was just shot in my living room, and we created an image of Dave literally sitting inside of a plane right by the window, and it was really just shot on my office chair, and lit. Or we did there was one image where we're literally at a gas station around the corner from my house, and he was holding up a cup of coffee, and then we AI'd it so that it looked like he was on some road in Finland surrounded by forest or something like that. It was just, it was fun. But we just wanted to see if we could push the envelope to the point where we could create this series, a sequence of images that would literally um, pretend in a believable fashion that he was actually on a vacation in Finland at the time.
And now we're at the point where we don't even have to get the lighting right of the image or
Yeah.
even pose the individual in a specific way. You're just throwing the individual, put this person in a Nordic style village, and he's wearing, overcoat, weather resistant overcoats, etc., and it will do the image for you and get the lighting almost perfect. And then, of course, you can right click on it and say, make a video out of this now. So we're at that point where we could actually redo that with video,
Yeah.
and folks would be hard pressed, I think, now to recognize that it's not real.
It's interesting because, that's the sort of thing that, of course, many people, including myself, um, I neither confirm nor deny, of course, that to use when you create thumbnail art, because what I would do is I would take some stills from an episode, throw it into AI and basically say, create a thumbnail out of that. And the interesting thing about this is that it will take these, two or three thumbnails, or these two or three screenshots, but then it will create something that is similar, but but the actual image of me or the guest or something is not that never really happened. It's just an approximation of what a reaction would have been like. I mean, it's wild, and it does it in such a short time that as a content creation tool, it then becomes very, very useful. Because if I had, it's not that I can't design like these kind of thumbnails myself. It would just take me so much longer. You know,
Well, I'm a big fan of true crime podcasts, and even on YouTube, I'll watch the true crime stuff. And invariably now, I'm noticing that the thumbnail is some shocking image, and that the image never appears anywhere in the
of
video
course,
at all. And
that's
it's
the
like
video.
I was kind of interested in it because of the thumbnail, of course. And so, yeah, I can totally see how that's a useful technique. Uh,
I mean, it's fun. It's funny. It's because the reality is, and I think this is really true for many, for many kind of media, like new media outlets, like this podcast, podcasts in general, YouTube channels, whatever it may be, is that very often, um, on one hand, you've got the demand that's steadily increasing, like the demand on creating more imagery to create more reels to promote the show or the channel in this way and that way and on that platform. That's like, today we've got 3 platforms, tomorrow might be 6, and they need different this and different that. But on the flip side of that is, well, I don't have a team, or very often channels like mine, or podcasts like mine, there's no team behind me. It's just me. That's basically it. It's not like I'm calling my editor and go like, "Hey, man, can you create me a vertical reel or something?" That just doesn't happen. Likewise,
right.
this isn't like Stephen Bartlett's Diaries of a CEO where they can employ somebody full time just to create thumbnails. That is not the kind of production this is. But because the demand increases, of course, then you're going to have to look for tools that allow you to
Mhm.
do things, um, you know, pretty much automatically, or at least tools that save you time so you can actually live up to a lot of those demands. And if anybody's wondering why there isn't more like Instagram content about the podcast, but that's why. It's because there's there's such a demand on my time that me as a solo creator, I guess, there's just a limit on how much I can actually do. If I want to do this every week, then there are going to be limits on how much stuff I can actually create.
There's a lot of interesting tools coming down the road from Adobe and other folks for editing video that are AI adjacent, so to speak. I noticed that they had a couple of years ago, they showed a product that was, it would go through and find all of the pauses and the breaks and the ums, and it would automatically edit them out and smooth the video over in such a way that you can see that it had happened. Um, so I think down the road, being able to pull out pertinent information out of a video is going to be a lot quicker because of the tools that are coming out that are going to be AI related. Generating thumbnails, then finding a specific area or a section, just selecting a section, say create thumbnail. Here's the text. Boom. It's going to be quick. Um, and I'm still using Premiere and After Effects for my video editing. My wife is starting to get into using Canva and that sorts of thing because she's wanting to become more active on social media in content generation. Great for me down the road. Um, but taking that into AI and finding ways for AI to edit that usefully is going to be a challenge, and I think that's what's coming around coming around the bend pretty soon.
But that's any of those tools are going to be interesting for anybody who's in a similar position to myself. Whether you're running a YouTube channel or whether you're running a podcast or whatever it is, anything that requires you to create additional content. Because this is like people do forget that sometimes is that when you make a podcast like this, it's not just making the podcast; it's about creating everything, all the other assets around the show. Um,
Yep.
and like I said, it's inevitably becoming more and more complicated because there's so many more demands on what you do. And there are tools. I mean, already, of course, now there are many more tools that you can use compared to when I started this 6 years ago. The fact that when I upload the audio version of the podcast, the fact that it automatically transcribes the entire audio file, and I don't have to do that in another software and then upload an ITT or an SRT file or something. I don't have
Right.
to do that anymore. It just does it automatically. These little things are already game changers, because if if you can save some time with each of the 15 tasks that you have to do, then overall, you spend less time on those. But because 6 months ago I had 15 tasks, now I have 35, I then spend the additional time, you know, fulfilling all the other things. But the day only has 24 hours still. So
Yep.
I'm not getting any more time into the system. So that's kind of where the whole thing
I
falls
definitely
down.
feel that there's I definitely feel my out just from a graphic design perspective, I feel my output's increased.
Mm.
Um, but I also feel that it's pushing my creativity because for two reasons. One, in the past, the company I worked for pretty much rubber stamped anything I did. And now that we've progressed and the company's moved on to we're more and more corporate and we're growing exponentially, the desire for better marketing is there, and so I'm being pressed for better design work. Well, I've been lazy for a long time, so it's been useful to use AI as an ideation tool as well to generate more ideas. So that's freeing up some time that used to be spent creating sort of mock-ups after mock-up after mock-up
Mm.
and sending them out for approval. Now I can generate several really quickly and just at least get an idea down that folks are will like. Finding the right AI that will generate that in such a way that it's useful and uses our assets correctly is still a challenge. But I definitely feel that it's helping us be more productive. Um, but there's always the trade offs that
Yeah.
we may be losing some skills in that, and then down the road, of course, who knows? Some people are going to be losing work and have to be retrained in some other field.
That's actually the thing. Where do you see new opportunities for photographers who are prepared to use AI intelligently?
I think all the old opportunities are still there. Portrait work, corporate photography is still there. I think landscapes are still going to be important. You can simulate landscapes within AI very realistically, but there's still something about an actual going to a place and taking a picture of something. Documentary work. There's a lot, especially. I mean, just think about what's going on with AI and water usage and those sorts of things. Documenting that is still going to be a photographer's, a job for a journalist or photographer. Um, this ever changing world that we're living in now, there's so much happening and so many things, stories that are sort of going by the wayside, especially here in the US. We get a very narrow band of information coming into us, and we're very isolated as far as our news goes. Um, for me, it's important to see what's going on outside of this little bubble that is the United States. Um, so from a photographer's perspective, I still see all those things as being useful and important, and especially from the documentary side, not AI adjacent or being touched by AI to some extent. Um, I'm also finding, the events in the world, the SpaceX launches and stuff that I'm very interested in seeing. I'm seeing, live footage and amazing photography of these things happening. And of course, people are accusing the photographer, is this AI? And it's like, no, I was really there. I really took this shot. Um, there's still a lot of potential out there. I think photographers have to become more specific and less generalized in their work. Pick a genre or pick a specific photography subset and dive into that and make it a whole your life. Um, but recognize that AI is going to be able to duplicate whatever you do in some way, some fashion down the road. Uh, it's scary,
Mm.
but I think photographers, we've always kind of struggled to make ends meet and to buy the next gear and the new lens, and that's always been a struggle and a desire. It's just a little harder now, and I think, uh, but I do think that there's a desire within the market for the authentic and the real, and that's probably the niche that we're going to be able to, as photographers, be able to fulfill.
If you were to come back in another 4 years, um, on this show, what do you think we'll be talking about then?
Yeah, I think in another 4 years, the potential of virtual reality, so to speak, and augmented reality will be probably a big driver. Um, for years, we were all pitched on virtual reality, and we all got the headsets and played with them, and they were vomit inducing, interesting gadgets. I think within 4 to 5 years, the AI data center system infrastructure will be such that those things will actually be possible. They'll be real time generated. I think AR, especially if you look at what's happening with self driving cars and that sort of thing, um, in my personal experience with self driving car, I would love that to be ubiquitous. I'd love everybody to be in self driving cars. I think the danger will be a lot less, and I think within 5 years that potential could be possible. Um, but I think we're going to have this so integrated in our lives. We'll be talking to our phones constantly, go for good or for bad, um, and using them in such a way that we can't really prepare for now. From a creative perspective, I think the prompting is going to become even easier in the sense that we'll be able just to, kind of give it general ideas of what we're after, and it will iterate much faster. As data centers come online, of course, this generation speed will be much, much faster. They're talking about putting data centers in space for whatever good that's going to do. Uh, but that means that we'll have, real time generation happening. Um, so Yeah, I mean, we feel like we're in the middle of it right now, but I think we're still just on the cusp and what's coming down the pike. I talked about the 3D, sort of the real-time 3D generation of objects and images. I saw one the other day where someone had taken a still photo and the AI had created a 3D, um, fully 3D movable uh, structure that you could walk through. So I think that's the direction things are headed very quickly. And, how is that going to affect entertainment? How is that going to affect uh, every little aspect of our life? It's still probably up in the air and question there.
Data centers are always interesting, I think, because I remember time when back in the punch, what are they called, punch cards, Hulk, whatever they call. Do you remember those? Like a computer that basically had the equivalent power of my electric razor or something, right?
Right.
Had to took up the space of like a building. Okay. And I'm just wondering whether, we're talking about, AI data centers, whether in 20 years' time that, the power of that data center basically fits onto, the back of a beer coaster. Do you know what I mean? I can see that technology shrinking in the same way that, computing technology is. What is it? A modern iPhone or something, or was it the first iPhone had more computing power than the space shuttle or something like that? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, there's the old joke, right? We now hold the computational power of a supercomputer in our hands, and we're watching
Mm.
cat videos. Is the old joke, right? Um,
Yes.
and we're generating cute pictures, right? With AI, and I mean that's another internet meme, internet joke. We have this great AI and capability, and we're making videos of anthropomorphic cats, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Or
it's always
Yetis.
like you're destroying you're or Yetis. You're destroying the environment to make a video of a Yeti. Um, so, yeah, I think there are some things preventing some of that happening. I think the Moore's law issue where,
Mm.
as you shrink things down, but what is happening is that we're finding I noticed for Stable Diffusion, for example, there's a new one of the new models came out, and what used to take 24 seconds now takes 2 seconds, simply because of the optimization of the models. And so what we're gonna see instead of necessarily shrinking, hardware, we're gonna be seeing optimization of the models by AI telling us how to optimize the models.
Mm.
And so I think there's going to be a little bit of feedback loop and positive feedback loop in the sense that the system will start to regulate itself or optimize itself down the road. Um, what is interesting though, and I don't know how this will play in, is that most of us now have these very powerful desktops for editing our photos and our videos, and those powerful desktops enable us to bring these high resolution images in and edit them, in real time. Well, with the increasing prices of GPUs and CPUs and RAM because of data centers creation, a lot of that is going to be out of reach for folks. And so, what I think we're going to be heading back towards is a model where we're going to have sort of the terminal system. Our desktop will be a very small, underpowered PC, if a PC at all, more of a sort of just a terminal for accessing a data center, and our actual CPU will be in the cloud. And as we get faster and faster internet, uh, that's going to become a reality. If we get up to, if you're getting 5 or 10 gigabit internet speeds, uh, the computational speed will be such that it'll be just as fast as my desktop unit, and the all of the things I'm doing on my desktop can be done in the cloud. And we already see that to some extent. For example, the cloud-based Lightroom solution is pretty fast and does some amazing things that the desktop-based version can't necessarily do. Of course, then if where are your files stored? Where are things at? Where do things go? That's going to be an interesting discussion down the road. But um, I really see, especially with the speed of the internet and the way things are, from a gaming perspective, for example, you can now join a system where the games are hosted and stored in the cloud, and they're basically streamed to you, and you're running whatever GPU system they have. They've got a 4090 or a 5090. You've got, you're just using your built-in Intel chip, and so you're getting full 4K resolution on your screen. It looks great. It's, there's very little lag, but it's all being hosted and run on a cloud system somewhere. So I think that's the direction we're headed for everything.
Micah, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I've learned a ton. I can't wait for us to have this conversation again in a little while to see, what's, what has come to pass and where we got it completely wrong. That's the thing. So thank you so much for being the guest on this week's Camera Shake podcast.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It was a great time, and we'll talk to you again soon and see how things change.
Yeah, let's not make it 4 years.
Absolutely.
Okay, folks, that's it for today. I would love to know what you think. Has AI made photographers more creative, or is it making the photographer less important? And what do you believe a human image maker can offer that a generator never will? Let us know in the comments below. For the beginning of this story, check out Micah's original 2022 Camera Shake appearance. It was episode 130. Believe that. Of course, all the links are in the description, no matter whether you're listening to the audio or you're watching us on YouTube. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Camera Shake wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can support the show at buymeacoffee.com/CameraShake and join the Shake Squad newsletter at camerashakepodcast.com. The full video version of this episode is available on YouTube. Just search for Camera Shake Podcast on there. And while you are there, drop us a comment, hit the like button, ring the notification bell, and share the episode with another photographer who might enjoy it. A new episode drops every Thursday. Until then, keep creating, keep experimenting, and keep shaking things up. I am Kersten Luts. This is Camera Shake, and we'll see you next Thursday.